This is part 2 of the balance series, and it addresses instability when you're standing. So if you're standing and you don't feel steady, then this video will show you things that you can do to help yourself. There are various reasons why you may be having problems with your standing balance. One of them is that your balance reflexes may be affected. I will explain shortly in terms of what I mean by that. Then the other reason you may be having trouble is you may have your feet too close together, which reduces your base of support and makes you less steady. Your body mechanics when you're reaching may affect your balance. So in essence, that's how you position your body can make a difference in being more stable or more unstable when you're reaching for things. Number 4, how much are you paying attention to your feelings of unsteadiness? Are you reaching for something and you really are getting unsteady, but you're not paying attention, but you keep reaching? And that can get people into trouble, and we're going to talk about that. Now, there's also other reasons why people are unsteady when they're standing, and that could be because they have a lack of flexibility or strength in order to keep your balance. So that's a basic need in terms of strengthening and stretching exercises, which a physical therapist can help guide you with. And lastly, you may be unsteady with standing because of your blood pressure dropping. And we're not going to talk about that in this video because that's part 3 of the balance series. I think many of us over time have touched something hot or stepped on something sharp, and right away we pull our hand away or we pick up our foot without even thinking about it. It happens immediately, and that's what reflexes are. There's something that happens to protect our body from harm and also from losing our balance. So balance reflexes occur in the same way. They happen quickly and they happen without you having to think about it. So normally, when you have to catch yourself, you're taking a step to catch yourself and you're taking it quickly, and it happens automatically so that it can be effective. In Parkinson's, the step may be delayed or too slow, which can make it ineffective. The step can be too small or too narrow, and typically it requires more of your conscious effort in order for you to drive that step to occur. For some individuals, they may not step at all. And then there's other people that may not even sense that they're losing your balance. Well, if you don't sense that you're losing your balance, you're not going to take any action to catch yourself. So that's a dangerous scenario. But regardless of which category you fit into, there are things you can do to protect yourself. So this is an example where I'm working with somebody in physical therapy, trying to get them to take bigger steps so that they can catch themselves more effectively. You see how I need to catch her because her small steps are insufficient to keep her balance. So here you can see she's much more effective in catching herself. She's taking a bigger step and she's leaning forward a little bit, which is also helping her keep her balance. Now here's another individual. She's not quite as impaired as the last person we saw, but we're just looking at taking bigger steps and maybe instead of 3 smaller steps, taking 1 or 2 bigger steps to improve her stability. So she pushes into my hand and then I let go, and that forces her to take a step. She's taken about 2 to 3 steps, and then we're just discussing to take bigger steps. And there she's taking only 1 step, but she's leaning forward and that helps her balance. For this individual, we were just fine-tuning to make sure she made sufficiently large steps to protect herself. For safety, you really should be doing these activities in a physical therapy department with a physical therapist or a physical therapist assistant. Here's an example where your feet are your base of support. And the base of support is quite small when your feet are even and together. When you lose your balance, your whole body weight goes behind your base of support and makes you lose your balance. I've explained it to my patients. If you put a pine tree upside down and you try and knock it over, it knocks over quite easily because it has a smaller base of support. So here's an example of a better base of support, either by taking a step or you're just standing with your feet in a staggered position so that you have a larger base of support. So that will either reduce your susceptibility to losing your balance in the first place, or if you do, when you step, your base of support will be sufficient to make you stable. So here you can see the whole body weight is within the person's base of support, which is very stabilizing. So here we have the pine tree right side up, and you can see it has a larger base of support, and if you try and knock it over, it's going to be a lot harder to do so. So we're going to be talking about stepping strategies and strategies adjusting your base of support to make you more stable. If you have mild difficulty with taking a step back to catch yourself, you can work on improving this by doing this one particular exercise of practicing taking a step back and working on the positioning of your foot as well as the speed. The speed's very important because if you're reacting too slowly, you're not going to be quick enough to catch yourself. So there's this rubbery stuff that you buy to put under rugs so they don't slip. So I have two of those, and then I put a little X on each one with like some painter's tape so that you can put it on the floor and then use it as a target to step on. So I'm going to put these down here, and you're going to have to play around and readjust it as you need in order to get the size step and the positioning of your step when you're practicing. And it's good to do it in a corner, so if you do lose your balance, then you can catch yourself. It'll back you up. And then having a chair in front of you is always just an extra precaution. If you lose your balance forward for some reason, then that's just an added protection. So you want to stand a little bit away from these dots and then first see if these dots are in a good position. So I've got some width in my step, and it's a big enough of a step where I can effectively catch myself. And then I check the position of the other dot, and that looks pretty good. I could probably bring them up just a little bit and still be effective. Okay, so once I'm in position, what you're going to do is just first practice stepping on the dot, and you can practice with one foot. Sometimes one leg is more difficult to move than the other side, so you can focus on one leg if you want, or you can alternate. So whatever works out best for you. And then you're going to just work, get the feel of where you're stepping, because a lot of times your perception of the size of your step or where you're stepping is altered, and you need that little extra visual to give you that so that you can step effectively. So the idea is to do enough repetition so that you develop, in essence, a muscle memory in terms of where your leg needs to go. So I'm going to practice, and then when you bring your foot back, you don't want to step with your toe on there, because when you actually lose your balance, you end up on your heel first. So what I've told my patients in the past, pretend like you're squishing a bug with the heel of your foot. So you're going to step like that. So the heel of the foot, get the idea of the positioning of where your foot needs to go. And then once you get the idea and the feel of where your foot needs to go, then you start practicing on the speed, because you need the speed to catch yourself. And then you repeat with the opposite leg. And then you just look at where your heel is hitting the X, making sure that you're hitting your target. And then go ahead and do it without looking at the X, but check it once in a while to see if you're close. Okay, now I feel like I've got the positioning of my foot down. I'm going with my heel down first, and then now I'm going to work on my speed. Almost lost my balance there. And that's why it's good to have the walls behind you. Another thing to add is instead of leaning back, which you don't want to do a little bit of a forward lean. That helps keep your weight forward, and it's just an added protection so that you don't lose your balance back. So a little bit of a forward lean. Okay, now I'm speeding it up. Make sure the heel goes down first. Now I'm going to alternate. And then practice that until you feel comfortable. And then that should be able to help you with catching your balance if you have mild problems. If you have more difficulty catching yourself, then this may not be effective, but later on in my video, you'll be able to see some alternatives for those individuals who just simply can't catch themselves. It's best to learn how to catch yourself from a physical therapist who specializes in Parkinson's. They can work with you on the size of your step, on the speed of your step, and the positioning of your foot, and tweak it so that you're the most stable and the most effective. If you don't step quick enough, then you won't be able to catch yourself effectively. The size of your step needs to be big enough to improve your base of support. For some individuals, when your Parkinson's medication is working, you can step more effectively, but then when your medications wear off, you can't step as effectively and you need to rely on other avenues to help keep yourself stable. As I said before, controlling the angle of your trunk, so leaning forward a little bit, will also help you maintain your balance a little bit better. Because your momentum is going backward, if you have a little bit of a forward lean, that will help counterbalance you. And then the therapist can help individualize exercises specific to your needs. Now, it's a tall order. We're asking you to focus on your steps, on your trunk, the size, many things, which is very difficult to accomplish for people that are more challenged. So for those individuals, using alternative methods to protect yourself will be advantageous, and we'll be going over that briefly. So what if you are feeling unsteady in the backward direction and you just can't catch yourself by taking a step? There are three main areas that you can focus on to help protect yourself from losing your balance in the backward direction. One of them is positioning your feet so that you have a better base of support. Now, it sounds simple enough to do that, but I have found with my patients, it's like you know what you need to do, but it's just remembering to do it. So trying to get in the habit of standing in a certain position will be very helpful, and we'll go over that. The second thing is using an anchor hand to protect your balance. So always having one hand free, so if you're losing your balance because you can't take that step, you can grab onto something. Or using the anchor hand just to hold on to something preventatively so that you are stable. And then lastly, positioning your body in an just in case scenario where you could lose your balance backward when you're doing something, and you position yourself so that if you do lose your balance, you're still going to be safe. So we're going to go over examples of that. When you're unsteady with standing, how you position your feet can make a big difference in your stability. In Figure A, this is how people position their feet when they don't have any balance problems. Now, I've seen individuals where they start feeling unsteady, and what they do, they start separating their feet more to improve their stability. But the problem with that is it doesn't give you increased stability forward or backward direction. The optimal position for your feet to be steady is C, where the one foot is ahead of the other and you have some space in between. Now, some individuals are steadier with their right foot back, and other people may be more stable with their left foot back. And that's something that you can play around with and see what's most stable for you. And then lastly, in Figure D, when I ask people to stand with a staggered stance, they sometimes tend to have their feet in a narrow position. And what that does is it actually makes them less stable and into losing their balance left or right. When you're standing with your feet even, that's not very stable in terms of protecting yourself in the forward and backward direction. So here I'm going to pull him off balance, and let's take a look at what he does. So he had to take a step to protect himself, which is normal, and he was able to catch himself. Now we have his feet uneven and a little bit wider apart. There you go. And I'm going to pull him off balance, and let's see what he does. So he was stable standing that way. And then he switched his feet. We're going to take a look at how he does. Okay, so with the right foot back, he was less stable than with the left foot back. And that's not unusual. So when you're doing things in a standing position, stand with the foot further back that you feel most stable with. I just want to clarify, if you're an individual who cannot catch themselves, you can't take a step back and react to a loss of balance. If you're standing with your feet even and you lose your balance backwards, that can be a very dangerous situation. Like this individual that you just saw, he took a step back when his feet were even. Well, he had that capability. But the main thing is that if you stand with your feet uneven and a little bit apart, you prevent yourself from losing your balance in the first place, so that you don't need to take a step back to protect yourself, and that's the idea. So here's a practical application when you're standing in a bus and the bus is starting and stopping, so it's going to be pulling you forward and pulling you back. So simply standing with your feet in a staggered stance can help improve stability when you're riding the bus. Obviously, holding on helps. And you're probably thinking, well, why is this guy standing? All the seats are open. So that would be the first choice. When you're standing and your feet are close together, you have a small base of support, which makes you less stable. So if you lose your balance or you get a little bit off balance, it's harder to recover your balance. So let's just take a look here. He has a small base of support, and I'm going to push him off balance sideways, and let's see how he does. Okay, so that was with his feet close together. Now I'm going to have him separate his feet a little bit wider apart. Good. And I'm going to give him the same amount of pressure pushing him off balance, and let's see how he does. So you can see he didn't have to take a step because he wasn't off balance. It was just a matter of he shifted his weight, but he was still stable. When you stand sideways on the bus, now when the bus stops and starts, you're going to be pulled to the left or the right. So it's important to have your feet wider apart. You can stagger them a little bit for if the bus is making turns. That'll help you be more stable with that. The thing is with foot positioning, regardless if you're on the bus or wherever you are, again, it just doesn't happen automatically. You need to really consciously think about, okay, I need to get my feet further apart, or I need to get my feet staggered. So you need to keep telling yourself these things, because with Parkinson's, these are little things that just aren't automatic like they used to be. So this next video is, I promise, the last video on foot positioning, but it's all important to keep you safe. So this next video just demonstrates the importance of having that width in your stance when you're standing with those staggered feet. So when you're standing with your feet uneven, we're going to go ahead and stagger your stance. You want to make sure there's enough width between your feet sideways, so that when you're stable forward and back, you're also still stable sideways. So here you can see he's still stable sideways. Now, if he brings that stance more narrow, he might be protected backwards, but he's less steady sideways. So when you stagger your feet, make sure your feet are also apart. Next, we're going to talk about the importance of your hands in keeping your balance. If your hands are occupied, you can't grab something to catch yourself, especially if you're unable to take a step to catch yourself. So we always want to have our hands free, at least one hand free, so we can reach out. I know all of us have done this. We've occupied both hands to carry things in and out of our home. It reduces the number of trips. but there comes a point where it becomes unsafe to do that, and you really need to try at least to have one hand free. I think many of you can see that this isn't a very safe scenario, going up and down the stairs and having both hands occupied. It just takes a little slip on a step to lose your balance, and what typically happens is that people have the reflex to hold on tighter to what they're carrying than to actually let go of it and grab for something that's safe. So try not to carry anything up and down the stairs using both hands. This would be a safer alternative if you could put everything that you need to transport in one hand and then have the other hand on the railing. It's always a good idea to have railings on your stairs just as a safety thing. If you're standing, try to avoid having both hands in your pockets. The main reason being is if you lose your balance, you need to get your hand out of your pocket and grab for something in order to keep your balance. And that might be just seconds too long or microseconds too long in order for you to be effective. So having that hand out of your pocket already, and then if you lose your balance, you can more quickly grab something and be more effective. If you're somebody that keeps losing their balance backward and having great difficulty or unable to catch yourself, here's some backup plans that you can try. This first one is when you're getting a jacket on, have your back close to a wall so that if you lose your balance back, the wall will block you from falling. So here's an example. Also, when you're getting dressed, another backup plan is to get dressed with your back to the bed or to a chair, whatever is safest for you and whatever is practical for your situation. So if you lose your balance backward, you just end up on the bed. When getting your shoes on or socks or your trousers, sit down when you're doing that. And then when you stand up, if you're pulling up your trousers, just make sure you're in front of the bed or of a chair or whatever is safest for you. So these are your backup plans. Here's another example of a backup plan. The first video shows you what happens when you're not thinking about what you're doing, and the second video shows you how much safer you can be if you just make some minor adjustments. So when you're opening a door, this is what can happen with your balance just opening a refrigerator door. So you're going to get into the position of your hand on the counter, stagger your feet so you're more stable, and then open the refrigerator, and you can see the huge difference in stability. And having one hand on the counter when you're opening it, then it helps you lean forward and keep your weight forward so you're not losing your balance backward. If you're unsteady on your feet, it's good to utilize occupational therapy for them to help you with solutions for safety in your bathroom, in your kitchen, or anywhere in the home. They can do a home safety check, and they can see where you're having the most trouble with your balance and problem solve and see what they can change in terms of your behavior or in terms of your environment for you to be safer. Most of this video I have focused on protecting your balance in the backward direction. But while you're standing, there's also scenarios where you can lose your balance in the forward direction. There's a couple things we need to look at in this picture. First of all is his body mechanics. This individual, he's holding a box and his hips are over his base of support, which are his feet, but you see all the rest of the weight of his body and the box is in front of his base of support, which is tipping him off balance in the forward direction. Now the other thing is this person is thinking about the box and not about his balance. So because his focus is on the box and not his balance is then not his priority, and he's not going to necessarily consciously keep it in check. Anytime you lean forward, there are three things you can do. The first one is, of course, stand with staggered feet apart and one foot ahead of the other. That gives you more forward support as well, increases your base of support in that direction. Secondly, anytime you lean forward, you need to counterbalance that motion. And the one thing that's a really good counterbalance is your buttocks. So whenever you're leaning forward, stick that buttocks out and make it exaggerated, and it'll feel exaggerated, but you will feel more steady. So as you can see here, the hips are behind the base of support and the body and the box are ahead of the base support, but it's okay because now they are better balanced out, and then you'll be more stable. And then the last thing is this individual is now thinking about his balance. So am I in balance or am I off balance? If I'm off balance, I need to quit reaching further. If I'm in balance, I can continue doing what I'm doing, and that's a good check. Another thing that can happen is you'll be standing and reaching for something, and the object may actually appear closer than it is. So you keep reaching further and further. In reality, it's out of your reach, but perceptually, you think it's within your reach, and then you end up overreaching. So just be aware of that aspect as well. So you get a little bit closer than you think you need to be when you reach for something to grab it. To summarize, in ways where you can protect your standing balance, first of all, if you're able to, try and take a step to catch yourself. Also, you want to position your feet in a staggered standing position so that you're more stable. Also, you want to always keep one hand free so you can grab something for balance. This is what I call your anchor hand. You want to position your body in the just in case mode. In other words, have something that will block you in case you do lose your balance. When you're reaching, you want to always counterbalance yourself so it doesn't propel you in the forward direction. And then lastly, and just as importantly as all the other steps, is try to keep your balance mentally in check. If you feel that you're off balance, you stop what you're doing and rein yourself back in. Thank you.